Hi everybody! Today I'm going to walk you through a staple in our house, which is homemade chicken broth. You can use this method for vegetable broth and just not put in chicken bones. You can also use these same ingredients for beef broth or even a lamb broth. But today we're going to make a chicken broth, which I do probably once a week. And I just make a huge batch of broth and I pour it into jars and then I store it in the fridge, and then we have it available for all types of recipes, and we'll be using it this Sunday. So I figured it's a good opportunity to walk you through something I do every week. So the first thing I do, and I like to save my kitchen scraps. So any chicken bones or any parts of chicken, like a chicken carcass after I roast it, I just put it into a Ziploc bag and throw it in the freezer. But sometimes if I used up my chicken bone supply, I'll go to the grocery store and just buy chicken bones, or you can buy chicken backs or chicken wings. But generally the butcher will know what you're talking about if you ask them for some bones, chicken bones for broth. So the first thing I do is I gather up all my aromatics, my vegetables, and all of these vegetables you're not going to eat them. You're just using them to flavor the broth. So you don't need to, cut them up any fine way. They're just going to go into the broth and just going to boil up with the bones, and then you'll have a really rich flavored broth. So here's what I do. I take some celery. I've already washed these celery stalks, and I'm just going to cut them into big chunks so that they'll be able to fit into my soup pot. My soup pot here, that goes in. I have parsley stems that I've saved. So these are just stems from parsley that I've picked off. There's some leaves attached, which is fine. Throw those leaves in because that'll add flavor. I also add in onion peel. So this is an onion that I used earlier today that I washed the onion. I just kind of ran it under cold water and rinsed the peel. I saved the peel, so I'm just going to add the peel to the broth. And here's another half an onion I didn't use that I've already rinsed the outside as well. Here's another onion. This one I'll show you what I do with a whole onion. I just cut the ends off. I cut the roots off because there can be some hidden grit at the roots, at the root ends. And then I just cut this in half. And if you want, you can cut it into quarters too. It all goes in, peel and all. And the peel not only adds nutrients, but it also adds color. That brown golden color of the peel will make your broth look like a really darker golden brown color. And that's what you want to have, like a richly flavored and nice looking broth. I have some whole garlic cloves. I'll maybe just smash them. I'm not even going to take the peel off. Just smash them, throw them in. Here's kind of like the ends of a garlic bulb. I'm just going to throw those in as well because those little ones are really annoying to peel. I have my bay leaves here. I have 4. I don't measure. I just kind of eyeball and use what I have. And I have these carrots. So the carrots, I'm going to leave the skin on. No need to peel. I'm not even going to waste my time peeling them because, again, not only is there a lot of nutrients in the peel, but there's some color that can be added. I will cut the stems off just in case there's some grit on the stems. So, oops, and then I think what I'll do is I'll just cut the carrots also into big chunks just so they fit a little better into the pot. And then that's it. That's all I add. Those are my aromatics. Those are my vegetables. And the final ingredient, of course, for a chicken broth are chicken bones. So these are some chicken backs that I've picked up from the store. Here's some chicken bones that I've saved in my freezer that I have been frozen. I have some wingtips here that I didn't eat. And I have this big kind of block of bone. It's going to kind of rustle it out of the plastic bag here. Let's see. Get it out. I should have taken it out of the freezer a little earlier. But again, you can just put it in frozen just like that. It'll all boil up together. And then the final thing is water. So I'm just going to add in just enough water to, not all the way to the top, because you want to save room for the water to kind of boil and bubble over. not bubble over, but kind of bubble over everything. So I'm just going to add in some water, just enough to mostly cover my ingredients. I'm just using cold tap water. You can also use filtered water if you'd like. Okay, that's just about enough. I'm just going to rearrange my bones here a little bit so that they're a little bit more immersed. Lift this out, wash my hands because I did touch some of that raw chicken. And I'm going to put it on the stove. So the other thing I'm going to tell you about, another ingredient that people like to add to a chicken broth to really draw out the nutrients from the bone is apple cider vinegar. And I have some here. And I'm just going to add like a splash. You don't want a lot because you don't want your broth to taste tart or sour, but just enough to kind of penetrate the bones and kind of distribute into the water, just like that. It's probably maybe a tablespoon. But what that does is it'll help draw out the minerals and the nutrients from the bone as it boils. Okay, so this is going on the stove, and once it comes to a boil, I'll show you the next step. Hi everybody, so welcome back. My broth has been boiling for a couple of minutes, and what I'm going to do now is show you how I'm going to skim off some of the impurities. So the impurities look like foam, and you'll see here I have some little pockets of foam that have kind of formed around the edges of the pot and around the bones. So I'm just going to carefully just scoop that out. You can also use a slotted spoon if you'd like. And the impurities, they're not harmful to your body. You can definitely eat them, but it will make your broth a little less clear, and it'll make just for a cloudier looking broth. So if you want a clearer looking broth that's still rich in flavor and color, I recommend skimming off the impurities in the foam. You can also take off some fat, but don't worry too much about taking off too much fat because fat is flavor, and it's much easier to remove the fat once it's cooled and chilled in your refrigerator because it just all kind of floats up to the top and becomes like a kind of a solid block. So don't worry about skimming off too much fat. And also you want to leave some fat behind too because fat is flavor. Once you've skimmed off as much foam as you can, and you know, some of it will be left behind and it's fine. Go ahead and just let that cool, and then you can toss that kind of bowl of fat and impurities of foam that you have. And then just simmer your broth on low to medium low for about 2 to 3 hours. And once it's cooled, we'll move on to the next step. Hi, welcome back everybody. So my pot of broth was on the stove at a simmer for about 2.5 to 3 hours, and I've turned off the heat a little while ago and I've let it cool a little bit. It's not burning hot, but it's still pretty warm. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do next. So I have this pot of broth here with all the vegetables and herbs, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I pour it into a colander that's resting inside a big bowl. I'm going to do it in batches because this bowl is probably not going to be big enough for me to pour in all the broth. So I'll do it in batches. The other container you can also use is like a big 4-cup measure that has a pouring spout, and that way it'll make it easier for you to pour into a big glass jar like this or into smaller jars. So here's what I'm going to do. Again, being very careful because this is heavy and it's still pretty warm. I'm just going to pour most of it into this colander like this. If I'm careful, I'll leave most of the bones and the vegetables behind. Okay. Spilled a little bit, but that's okay. Carefully lift it out. And then I have, what I'm left with is this big bowl of broth. Okay. So what you can do here is you can take a ladle and you can ladle it into jars and then let it cool before you put it in the refrigerator. If you don't let it cool all the way, what can happen is it can, if you put the lid on it while it's still hot and put it in the fridge, it can turn sour overnight. It's not good. It's best to let it cool to room temperature and then close it up and then put it into the fridge. So, so I have this funnel here. It has like a big wide mouth funnel, and I have this ball jar here. You can also use smaller jars. And what I would do is I would take a ladle. I would actually probably do it over the sink, just in case. But you can just ladle this into here. And you can see it turned a nice brown color. Looks like a pretty rich broth. If you want it to be a bone broth, you would actually let it boil even longer, up to 24 hours. And that really kind of pulls out all the nutrients and makes a really incredibly rich and nutrient dense broth. But this we just want to use for cooking and for maybe some soups. So about 3 hours, 2.5 hours of boiling should be fine. So I'm just going to carefully ladle into here. And then I'm going to continue the same with the rest of the broth ingredients. I'm going to rest this colander back in and pour the rest in, and then we'll be done. So I'll see you tomorrow on Sunday. We'll have your broth already cooling in the fridge. There'll be a layer of fat on top, which you could keep. It'll really add flavor to your dishes, or you can also scrape it off too. And you've made your first batch of broth. Enjoy!